A situation I come across a lot in the athletes that I work with is this idea of feeling like you want to perform well, whether it's because you want to get more playing time or you don't want to lose your starting position. So you want to play well, which then leads to pressure. And so you find yourself actually underperforming in these moments when you really want to do well. So what I want to do is I want to explain why that happens. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about what causes that in the first place and why it causes you to underperform. Then I will go over a strategy that you can begin applying to help yourself perform your best in these situations when you are feeling pressure. So what's causing you to underperform in the first place? Well, when we think about those situations when you want to perform your best and you're experiencing this pressure and so you tend to not perform as well as you'd like, the first place we need to look is the expectation you have for yourself that day. Are you expecting yourself to play perfectly? Are you expecting yourself to not make any mistakes? When you have these expectations, which can very easily turn into have-tos, so I have to play well so that coach doesn't pull me, or I have to play well to get more playing time, those expectations can very quickly lead to this feeling of pressure. Now, when you experience this feeling of pressure during the games, what's typically the natural next step in your mind? Is it, oh, I'm feeling this pressure, I feel very confident, I know I can perform well under pressure? If that is the way you think, then we know this pressure is helping you. However, in the situation that I'm describing right here, this pressure does not lead to that type of thinking. Instead, it leads to more fearful thinking. Right? You experience the fear because you don't want to mess up. You don't want to lose that position. You don't want to not get playing time, so you have a lot of fear. Now, this fear is what will start to highlight the main reason why you're underperforming, and it all has to do with your focus. So that's what I want us to talk about first, is this idea of focus. Whenever you're thinking so much about not wanting to make any mistakes, your focus is on this idea of not wanting to make any mistakes, but it's also on everything else that can happen if you do make mistakes. So you have your focus very wide. I was talking to a pitcher yesterday, and we were going through this very similar idea because he's dealing with the same situation where he's feeling a lot of pressure right now to perform well, but he's not performing well due to that pressure. Now, when I asked him what he was focused on or what he was thinking about when he's pitching, he said that he's thinking about what he doesn't want to have happen. I hope I don't hit this batter. I hope I don't walk the batter. I can't make any mistakes. When he's thinking that, that's what he's focused on. So for yourself, if you're thinking about all these things that could go wrong and all these things that you're afraid of, that right there is showing us what you're focused on. You're focused on these things going wrong. Now, the reason that this focus leads to underperforming is because the focus that you have can actually change the way you perform. So back to this baseball pitcher example. When he is thinking about not wanting to throw any balls or not wanting to hit the batter, what ends up happening is that he babies the ball. So he tries to take some off of it because he's trying too hard to be perfect with throwing a strike. But because of that, he is messing with his natural mechanics, and so he isn't as accurate with his pitches. For yourself, if you're dealing with this underperforming, are you changing the way that you're playing because of this desire and this expectation to perform well, since that idea of trying to perform well leads to fear? That is where we will see you underperform. Are you holding yourself back? Are you trying not to make mistakes, which causes you not to play as aggressively and freely? Are you being a little tentative? All of this is what's leading to the underperforming during games, and it can all be traced back to this idea of the focus as a result of the expectations that you feel. Now, what can you do about this? If you're feeling this type of pressure and these expectations, and then all that's leading to fear and you're underperforming during these moments, what's a strategy that you can use to help? There's a 3-part strategy that you can use. And part number 1 is you want to simplify your thinking. Now, what I mean by this is instead of thinking about a bunch of different things when you're out there, you want to focus on one thing. Make it as simple as possible for yourself. To be completely honest with you, make it so simple that you feel like there's no way that this should be helping. Because when you're out there and you are underperforming, like we were just talking about, you underperform because this fear causes you to perform differently. So what we're after is you going out there and just letting yourself play. Because you're good enough to go out there and play your best naturally. If you're the one holding yourself back, you have to get out of your own way and just let your body take over, let your skills take over. And the way that we do this is by simplifying thinking, by focusing just on one thing. Now, it doesn't really matter what this one thing is, but the only kind of stipulation is you want to make sure it's part of the process and controllable for yourself. With that pitcher example, he and I were talking about just focusing on the mitt, just trying to hit his target. That's it. Really focus on, all I'm trying to do is hit my target right now. He's working to take away all that pressure of, am I going to, strike this guy out? Will my coach be happy? I don't want to hit him. I don't want to walk him. No, we're just focused on hitting the target. Just focus on your target. So for yourself, how can you simplify your thinking right now when it comes to competing? Instead of thinking about all these different things and trying too hard to be perfect and too hard to play your best, simplify what you're focused on. Next is to be careful how you respond to mistakes. So one of the things that I see a lot when you do start to become more successful and you start to perform well under pressure, and what can happen is as soon as you make a mistake, you shoot back to beating yourself up, getting stressed, and now you try too hard to make up for that mistake moving forward. When in reality, if you make one mistake, that's fine. As long as that one mistake doesn't turn into 2, 3, 4, and 5 mistakes, which typically happens because of how you responded to that first mistake. So be very careful right now when you're trying to perform better under pressure to really make sure that you are responding to mistakes well. Move on from them as quickly as possible in the moment. If you need to, make an adjustment, but don't dwell on that mistake. And most importantly, don't try to fix the mistake from a forcing standpoint afterwards. Let it go and keep focusing on that one thing and allowing yourself to perform. And then the third part is to stay consistent with what you can control. When you're worried about the outcome, we know that the outcome is not something that you fully can control. So in these moments of pressure, where you're feeling this fear and you don't want to make mistakes, make sure you are focusing on what you can control instead of what you cannot control. Now, when I say be consistent with what you can control, it means that when you approach these games, when you approach these situations, make sure you are as prepared as possible, because that's something that you can control. When it comes to your focus, make sure you are focusing on that one thing consistently, because that's also something you can control. Make sure you're responding to mistakes well, because that's something that you can control. The more you focus on these controllables and the more attention you give to them and the more consistent you stay with them, the less attention you are giving to these fears. And as we discussed earlier, the attention you give to the fears is the very thing that causes you to underperform. Now, there's one last part to this strategy that I want to mention, and that is to always make sure you breathe. When you're in these moments of pressure and you're feeling all this expectation and all this fear, as we were just going over with this strategy, everything we're trying to do is to simplify, simplify, simplify. And the best way to simplify your thinking in the moment is to breathe. Just focus on taking some deep breaths. Try some count breathing. Breathe in for a count of 5. Breathe out for a count of 5. Do this a few times. But don't forget to breathe. I know it's super simple. I know this whole strategy's been simple, but that's the point. That's what we have to do. When you are feeling pressure and fear, the mind is racing. It's all over the place. We need to simplify your thinking, simplify your mind, so that you can just allow the talents that you have to take over. Now, if you have any questions about this strategy, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.